So Hakeem Jeffries, I don't know if you guys, maybe you've been following along with him all these years, but maybe the mainstream media has provided this protective bubble because they identified him as ascending to power in the Democratic Party and they didn't want him to be the reality of who he is to be known. I don't know. But I scrubbed through a lot of video of this guy, and probably the most troubling of all the videos, and it's hard for me to even prioritize which is the most troubling because they all reflect problems in different areas. But one of the most troubling videos is, you won't be able to look away from this. This is Hakeem Jeffries, and he is speaking to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas.
And if Justice Thomas really wants to deal with bullying in America, or this problem of people supposedly unwilling to accept outcomes that they don't like, I've got some advice for Justice Thomas. Start in your own home. Have a conversation with Jeannie Thomas. She refused to accept the legitimacy of the 2020 presidential election. Why? Because she didn't like the outcome. And so instead, she tried to steal the election, overthrow the United States government, and install a tyrant. That's bullying. That's being unwilling to accept an outcome because you don't like the results, because the former twice impeached so-called president of the United States of America lost legitimately to Joe Biden. How did she respond? Instead, she said the Bidens should face a military tribunal in Guantanamo Bay on trumped-up charges of sedition. You've got to be kidding me. And lastly, let me ask this question of Brother Thomas. Why are you such a hater? Hate on civil rights, hate on women's rights, hate on reproductive rights, hate on voting rights, hate on marital rights, hate on equal protection under the law, hate on liberty and justice for all, hate on free and fair elections. Why are you such a hater? And you think you can get away with it, escape public scrutiny, because you think that shamelessness is your superpower?
Mr. Chairman, a point of order.
Here's a news flash straight from the House Judiciary Committee.
Point of order.
Truth thrust to the ground will rise again, and truth will be your kryptonite.
Holy smokes. So for the last couple of years, really since the rise of AOC, there's been this divide in the Democratic Party, right? Between what I would call the Nancy Pelosi wing. Nancy Pelosi is still very liberal, very progressive, but her defining characteristic is actually her corruption, right? There's been a divide between that wing, which I would call the establishment wing, and this new, I don't even want to call it a progressive wing. It's more of this quote unquote democratic socialist wing, this ideological wing, the dogmatically socialist wing of the Democratic Party. That's the squad: Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, AOC. And there's this divide. At first, Nancy Pelosi, you could tell Nancy Pelosi was so annoyed at these upstarts, these young congresswomen who came into Congress, and instead of just towing the line and doing what Nancy Pelosi said, they started challenging her because they didn't believe that she was radically leftist enough. And at first, it seemed like, well, Nancy Pelosi is just going to force them to toe the line, blah, blah, blah. But they've gained incredible power. I would argue that the radical leftist wing, the squad wing of the Democratic Party, is actually more powerful than the establishment wing at this point. So when Nancy Pelosi said that she was stepping aside from Democratic leadership because Democrats lost the House, she would no longer be Speaker. When she stepped aside, it was really a question. I was so curious about who would end up being chosen by the Democrats for their leadership role, because that, I believe, is a reflection on the direction of the Democratic Party. Are they going to course correct and move away from this Marxist wing of their party? Are they going to just stick with, generic old corruption like Nancy Pelosi? Or are they going to evolve past corruption and really embrace the Marxism? And Hakeem Jeffries is the answer to that question. I mean, first of all, to address a Supreme Court justice in this tone of voice shows that you don't have respect for the institutions of our government. If you don't have respect for the institutions of our government, then you really don't belong serving in government. And I say that as someone who criticizes in sometimes a very blunt way the actions of politicians. But there is still respect owed to the office that the very highest ranking government officials hold out of respect for our nation, even if you criticize their actions. That is not what Hakeem Jeffries displayed in this outburst. What he displayed was a viewpoint of demeaning an individual for disagreeing with him publicly in the House of Representatives, to claim that Justice Thomas is a hater of civil rights and women's rights and hater of free and fair elections and hating on freedom and liberty and justice. It's not only false, it's really a disgusting attack. To attack his wife to his face, to say she refused to accept the results of the election, and to make it seem like this is an evil thing to do when he himself, we have these tweets. I want to show these tweets on the screen right now. This is Hakeem Jeffries on February 16th of 2018. This is what he tweeted. The more we learn about 2016 election, the more illegitimate it becomes. America deserves to know whether we have a fake president in the Oval Office. #Russian interference. And he repeated this. This wasn't just something from 2018 that he maybe has moved past 4 years later. No. On October 14th, 2022, that's a little bit over 1 month ago, he said, "We will never bend the knee to the election deniers who poison our democracy." So which is it, Hakeem? Are you a poison to democracy because you question the outcome of an election? Or are you allowed to question the outcome of an election when there was electioneering and problematic behavior surrounding it? Because you've done both.